The accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba presents the 25th Silver Anniversary College Football Hall of Fame season of Fighting Irish Preview. And now, here's your host, Phil Houck.
The story goes that back in 1926, the Notre Dame USC series started as a result of both schools' desire to add to their schedules a national opponent, and Mrs. Newt Rockney's desire to enjoy some sunny Southern California weather every 2 years. The idea was actually hatched during a discussion Bonnie Rockney had with the wife of the USC athletic director during a late-season visit to not-so-sunny Nebraska the season prior. And the rest is history. The game has been played continuously since, with just two exceptions. Last season's game was a COVID casualty, and World War II stopped the series from 1943 to 45. In 1927, a record 120,000 fans showed up at Chicago's Soldier Field to watch the Irish defeat the Trojans 7-6. From 1929 to 1932, the two powerhouse teams combined for 4 straight national titles. During the 1960s, John Hewitt, Mike Garrett, and O.J. all won the Heisman Trophy, and the national championship was won or denied by the game's outcome 5 times. In 1972, Anthony Davis ran wild for 6 touchdowns, and then in 1973, on the game's first play, freshman Luther Bradley knocked Lynn Swan's helmet off, and later, Eric Pennick went 85 yards to pay dirt. In 1977, the Irish stormed the field with a Trojan horse and wearing green jerseys for the first time since the 50s and scored a victory on their way to the national title. In 1986, the era of Lou had begun, and Notre Dame came from behind to win on John Carney's last-second field goal. That happened November 29th, 1986, a game date I will never forget because it happens to have been the day I got married. In 1988, it was number 1 versus number 2 in the Coliseum, and Lou Holtz sent Ricky Waters and Tony Brooks home, but Tony Rice, the Rocket, and the Three Amigos led the Irish to a big win. In 1989, a brawl between the teams broke out in the tunnel before the game, and in 2005, helped by a Bush push, USC came from behind and Charlie Weiss had his signature loss. Lou Holtz never lost to the Trojans. Ty Willingham and Charlie Weiss never beat the Trojans. And Brian Kelly has won 7 out of 10 USC matchups, including the last 3. ND-USC games account for 5 of the 10 most watched college football games in television history, and Notre Dame and USC have combined for more national titles, Heisman Trophy winners, All-Americans, college and NFL Hall of Famers, and players taken in the NFL Draft of any collegiate football rivalry series ever. And this week, all that history will add another chapter as one of the greatest of all college football rivalries is back. Now, stay tuned for Fighting Irish Insight from America's foremost authority on Notre Dame football, Tim Priester, senior editor of IrishIllustrated.com. After these words from Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, Shear McCulloch Auctioneers, and Flight by Yingling. Raise the bar with only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories. This is Fighting Irish Preview.
The University of Notre Dame exemplifies dedication to hard work, integrity, and personal values, which result in success in the classroom and on the football field. The professionals at Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, like Notre Dame, know the same dedication, and their experience and expertise provide peace of mind for you and your business. Tax planning, tax compliance, auditing, business valuation, and estate planning, the full-service accounting firm of Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba, like the Irish, has what it takes to help you achieve success. Located in Fort Wayne near Jefferson Point, Haynes, Eisenbarger, and Skiba proudly supports Notre Dame football and congratulates all those who are a part of the greatest tradition in all of sports. Go Irish!
This is Art Salzberg. I don't speak for a lot of companies, but Shearer McCulloch is a firm that provides a great and much-needed service. As Sharon and I get older, we've been thinking of moving, but frankly, the thought is somewhat overwhelming. That's where Shearer McCulloch comes in with a full-service plan that takes the pressure off. Listen to this. Shearer McCulloch will sell your house, Auction the items you don't want to take, then pack everything else and move you. In sports terms, that's a blowout win. Shearer McCulloch uses an international auction platform to make sure your possessions are seen by the right buyers. They'll get top dollar for your special treasures. Shearer McCulloch is highly recommended by leading retirement communities and law firms, plus they're AAA with the Better Business Bureau. Call them at 441-8636. That's 441-8636. They'll make your moving experience easy and profitable. Shearer McCulloch.
Introducing Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer. For those who don't follow trends, but craft them. Flight by Yingling is 12 ounces of uncompromised refreshment from America's oldest brewery. With only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, this is premium refreshment 6 generations in the making. Don't just raise a glass, raise the bar. Flight by Yingling. Now available wherever beer is sold. DG Yingling & Son Incorporated. Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Please enjoy responsibly.
This is Art Salzberg. Congratulations, Phil and Tim, on 25 years of Fighting Irish Preview.
Now back to Fighting Irish Preview with your host, Phil Houck.
Well, Tim Priester, USC week, and you and I go back a few years with this series. We both grew up in South Bend. We all USC games have been iconic our whole lives. Let's talk about our earliest memories of that game as kids, and I'll go first. Tim, I was really young, but I do remember I was really young at this time. I do remember my dad complaining about how the refs stole the game from Notre Dame in 1964 on that phantom holding call. And, of course, that denied Era a national championship in his first season. So, okay, and I would have been 3 years old at the time. So that's a long time. What's your earliest memory?
Yeah, I would have been 4, and I don't remember that one. But I do know, I distinctly remember Notre Dame, Michigan State 10-10 tie where I was, who I was with. Notre Dame played Southern Cal the next game and beat them 51-0. I'm not sure I remember that, but I do know that I was in the northeast corner of Notre Dame Stadium in 1967 when O.J. Simpson rushed for 2 touchdowns and beat Notre Dame 24-7. And then after that, of course, I definitely remember, everything else after that. But it's a great series. It's something that we were talking about. There's a lot of animosity between Notre Dame and Michigan and how that series has evolved. I'm not sure that the majority feel that way about Notre Dame USC. I mean, I personally, I've always respected them. They scared me when I was a kid when they came out of the tunnel at the Coliseum. But, and I don't know that, I'm sure not every Notre Dame fan feels that way about USC, but I think there's an ample amount of respect between Notre Dame and USC. And that's part of what makes a great rivalry. It can be a little bit more contentious as well, but that it's, there's been some scuffles between Notre Dame and Southern Cal. Indeed.
And I think it was a more contentious rivalry until Lou Holtz went 11-0. He won 11 straight against him. And I think that just kind of took some of the wind out of the thing. Of course, then Charlie Weiss, Ty Willingham couldn't beat him, but Brian Kelly's done pretty well against him. You mentioned Michigan, and I think geography has something to do with that one. But a great, great rivalry. I also have an unusual favorite memory of the series. Tim, you and I have talked about this before. 1971, and it's a loss. And, of course, 71, Joe Theismann goes out to the Coliseum. Notre Dame's ranked bound for glory. They were undefeated. And he threw for 526 yards, set an all-time school record. That still stands today. It was raining that night, and Notre Dame lost by a couple of scores.
38-28.
38-20, 10 points. I thought it was 10 points. And I was 10 years old at the time, and I always remember that game the most because that is the year that I would say I absolutely fell in love with Notre Dame football forever and ever and ever. And I always look back to that year. I always considered Joe Theismann to be my favorite player. But yeah, lots of great memories from Notre Dame USC. And both Notre Dame and USC this week, Tim, coming off bye weeks. And I want to talk about bye weeks a little bit. An overused cliche, of course, is it's always a good time to have a bye week. Right now, USC is the fourth straight Notre Dame opponent to be coming off a bye week, and there's going to be 2 more this season. And about the same thing happened last year. It may have been identical. Maybe there were 5 that were coming off of byes that Notre Dame had to. So the upshot of this is that these teams have 2 weeks to prepare for Notre Dame. How much of an advantage do you think that is to opponents? And is this kind of the price Notre Dame has to pay for not being in a conference, the way teams are able to schedule these things and really for being really good?
Yeah, your last point about not being in a conference, that's part of independence. That comes with independence, and certainly opponents want that extra week before playing Notre Dame. It's always beneficial in terms of getting guys healthy. I thought Brian Kelly said something pretty interesting this week that, when you play a team that's coming off of a bye, a lot of times they make some significant changes in the way they approach things, whether it's offensively or defensively. And so he feels like a lot of their first quarters here in recent weeks have been adapting to, defenses that are doing something different than what they had showed on tape. Now, nobody cares about that. Nobody wants to hear the quote excuse or the reason, but yes, it is overplayed to say that it's a good week to have a bye, but when you have it, it's the most physical game that we know of in this country, and it helps players mentally, physically, emotionally, to come back and to rebound. And then, there are some game planning issues that 2 weeks of preparation provides for an opponent.
Yeah, I heard those comments from Brian Kelly as well about the adjustments that they seem to have to make much more deeply and commonly coming off of those bye weeks. And no doubt the 2 weeks is plenty of time to make some pretty significant changes to your game plans. And so expect anything from USC in the first quarter. Tim, a bit of a midterm report card on the Irish since we are at midseason. Let's cover the whole team quick hit style. A few words and then just a trending up, trending down, or neutral. Let's start with the receivers.
I would say that, they only have 5 scholarship receivers in the rotation going into this game. I mean, Kevin Austin has emerged at times, Avery Davis certainly, but I would, as a whole, I would say trending down a little bit just because of the inconsistency.
Well, I like what Kevin Austin's doing. I think he could be a big star in the second half. But yeah, only 5 guys out there. That's a concern. Let's talk about the offensive line, though, and I think I know where you might go with that one. And this is all relative to how bad they were early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, trending up. It was a good performance against Virginia Tech to rush for 180 yards. Seemed like that would have been 280 yards last year. So trending up, new guys on the left side of the offensive line with Andrew Kristofic and Joe Alt. Looking better. They got to string some games together, though.
Yeah, that'd be great. And the quarterback situation, which has been that and the offensive line have been the 2 biggest topics of the year. Do you think we've got some stability there now? I can't imagine we do.
Yeah, about stability, but trending up based upon the way the Virginia Tech game ended, based upon Tyler Buckner, who eventually struggled, but Tyler Buckner did some good things and actually showed that he could throw the football with some success. So I would, with caution, I would say trending up.
Well, maybe we have a system put together now. And let's talk about the running backs, the running game. Kyron Williams, and this goes hand in hand, of course, with the improved performance by the offensive line.
But trending down in terms of Chris Tyree, still a little bit banged up. I think most of us expected to hear that the turf toe had healed or had progressed and they were ready to go. So trending down for Chris Tyree or the experienced backs. But Logan Diggs, the true freshman, played well against Virginia Tech.
And Kyron Williams, outstanding.
Great player.
Defensive line, including issues relating to pass rush and all the good things that come with our defensive line. How are we looking there?
Yeah, I would say trending up. They've provided a good pass rush, which creates turnovers on the back end generally, and The depth is still there. They've survived a couple injuries. I think it's trending up. It's really one of the strengths, if not the strength of this football team.
Expected to be a strength, and they do seem to have gotten better really almost every week. That's a good thing. Linebackers, how are we doing at the linebacker position?
Basically, 3 guys, maybe 4 guys, I guess, if you include Pryor with Kaiser at the Sam linebacker or the Rover linebacker position. A lot of snaps being taken by Drew White and JD Bertrand, but it's been a solid group. I mean, I would say trending up because they're good football players. They diagnose extremely well. And I think that they've had a real solid season through 6 games.
They have had a solid season, no doubt, but I get a little concerned about all the snaps they've taken and the toll that could take. Cornerbacks and safeties, you got an All-American in this group. That certainly helps. And a couple of guys at the corners who have played pretty well.
Yeah, I think Cam Hart's definitely trending up for a guy that's inexperienced as a cornerback. We know you mentioned Kyle Hamilton, a great player. I don't think that Houston Griffith or DJ Brown has hurt Notre Dame at the other safety position, which isn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but it's really progress based upon where they were with their careers. And Clarence Lewis is hit and miss at times at cornerback, but as is Tariq Bracy, but that's a position that's meant to be hit and miss. So I think overall, not all 6 games, but I'd say overall, the secondary is trending up.
Yeah, especially with the emergence of Cam Hart. We really like what he's been doing. All right, and one last one, Tim, special teams, and focus on the kicking game and the punting game.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, that was the highest midterm grade that we gave for Notre Dame with special teams. Chris Tyree had the long run. Kyron Williams has given him a little long run on the kick return. Kyron Williams gives him a little bit of punt return. And the kickers, I mean, the specialists, Jonathan Dorr, he misses some that you wonder why he misses, but he hits the ones that he needs to. And Jay Bramlett just keeps getting better and better every year. So I think Notre Dame special teams have been really, really good this year.
Yeah, I came across something about Bramlett that I'm sure you'll remember from when he was recruited, and that at that time, going back 4 years ago now, I guess, he was considered the number 1 punting prospect in the country, and he certainly has proven that now. Okay, let's move on to some personnel development this week. Quarterback Brendan Clark, who had off-season knee surgery, entered the transfer portal. To me, it's always unusual when they do it in the middle of the season, so I never quite know what that means. I had high hopes for Clark. I liked his size. He was a little bit of a dual threat. I thought he was going to be a factor perhaps as early as next year after coming off that injury. How do you feel about this? Any surprise there, and how does it affect that quarterback room?
You have to recruit. You can never stop recruiting quarterbacks in this era where guys enter the transfer portal all the time, especially at the quarterback position. You just have to keep recruiting it. I think anytime a player leaves in the middle of the year, I really don't understand that, but I guess his heart isn't into it, and he's coming off injury, and he knows that he's not going to get playing time this year. So you just have to keep recruiting. Steve Angeli comes in next year. Notre Dame's getting a visit from Walker Howard, a 5-star quarterback commitment to LSU. I don't know how that will go. And Notre Dame's recruiting Dante Moore from the class of 2023 out of Detroit that I really like. So you just have to keep recruiting. But with the loss of Clark, you really need to look at adding a second quarterback in this class that will have Steve Angeli in it.
Yeah, they absolutely need to get somebody else in that room. And it is a huge recruiting weekend. The USC game article by IrishIllustrated.com recruiting expert Tom Loy I read this week. 76 prospects will be on the Notre Dame campus for prospects from the class of 22, 23, and 24. And so it's a big game. It would be nice to have a nice big victory over USC to impress those young men, but it's going to go a long way, no matter what, towards the future of Notre Dame as to how the recruiting goes this week. Tim, the Irish reached a high of 7 in the coaches poll after defeating Wisconsin, but then dropped to 13th after a competitive loss to the now number 2 ranked Cincinnati. So they now stand at 13th. Tim, there's 6 teams ahead of Notre Dame that have, I think you know where I'm going with this, that have losses. None of them were at the hands of the number 2 team in the country. And last week, Iowa was pounded by Purdue, a team Notre Dame beat by 2 touchdowns. Does this sound kind of fishy to you? I mean, what I do understand about polling is I don't really understand polling. It doesn't ever really make a lot of sense. But what are your thoughts?
Well, that was kind of my first reaction, Phil. But, Iowa beat, at the time, number 17 Indiana. They beat number 9 Iowa State. They beat Penn State. And then they had a clunker against Purdue. So I think we have to look at all of the evidence, and I can understand why they're ahead of Notre Dame. Notre Dame just doesn't have a marquee win. They had an opportunity against Cincinnati and didn't come through with it. Of course, if they had beaten Cincinnati, then a lot of critics would say, well, Cincinnati's not that good, and Cincinnati is very good. But, Oregon has a loss ahead of Notre Dame, and they're ahead of Notre Dame, but they beat Ohio State. Mississippi has done some good things. So I just, what's hurting Notre Dame right now is just a lack of a marquee win. And as you look ahead of the schedule right now, the remaining 6 opponents are unranked. So I'm not sure how much they're going to be able to, attrition will move them. If they win, they'll end up solidly within the top 10. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Is that good enough for a playoff spot? I don't think Notre Dame looks like a playoff team, even if they go 11-1. And when you consider the competition they'll play in the second half of the season, but just win, take care of business. If it means a New Year's Six bowl, I think that would be fine. But you can't do much about the polls. You just got to keep going out there and trying to put up impressive performances.
That's a fact. And when the committee gets together, they'll look at all these factors, I think, a little bit more closely. And I think that starts next week. And that may work to Notre Dame's benefit. Thanks, Tim. Coming up, it's the all-time Irish hero, key to an Irish victory, injury report, and the world-famous Irish Illustrated prediction. And during the break, it's the Fighting Irish Fact of the Week, brought to you by Ron Wise and the Wise Insurance Agency. This is the 362nd edition of Fighting Irish Preview.
Introducing Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer. For those who don't follow trends, but craft them. Flight by Yingling is 12 ounces of uncompromised refreshment from America's oldest brewery. With only 2.6 grams of carbs and 95 calories, this is premium refreshment 6 generations in the making. Don't just raise a glass, raise the bar. Flight by Yingling. Now available wherever beer is sold. DG Yingling & Son Incorporated. Pottsville, Pennsylvania. Please enjoy responsibly.
The Fighting Irish Fact of the Week is brought to you by our friends at the Wise Insurance Agency. Defensive lineman Kurt Heinisch has now played in 54 career games, which sets the all-time program record. Last week, he broke the program record that had been jointly held by Dalen Hayes, Drew Tranquil, Romeo Aquara, and Matthias Farley. Call Ron Wise at the Wise Insurance Agency or go to thewiseinsuranceagency.com and get an auto or home quote in less than 5 minutes.
Now back to Fighting Irish Preview with your host, Phil Houck.
This is Fighting Irish Preview. USC is in town this week. TV coverage on NBC is at 7:30 p.m. South Bend time. And it's now time for the all-time Irish hero, brought to you by the Marina at Lake Gage. Chris Craft, Mastercraft, and Premier Pontoons. We share your boating passion. And this year, in honor of 25 years on the air, we are focusing on the great running backs of the Fighting Irish Preview years, the last quarter century. So far this season, we've honored Autry Denson, Julius Jones, Ryan Grant, Darius Walker, Armando Allen, and Theo Riddick. And this week, we honor Cam McDaniel. Cam McDaniel worked his way up from being a lightly regarded 3-star recruit to a reliable 3 yards and a cloud of dust runner, then to being the team's leading rusher, team captain, and an internet sensation when a photo snapped of him in action at exactly the right time went viral. A member of Brian Kelly's first recruiting class, McDaniel was recruited out of Coppell, Texas in 2010. That season at Coppell High School, McDaniel rushed for over 1,900 yards, had 492 yards receiving, and totaled 37 touchdowns. He worked his way onto special teams as a freshman and then broke into the depth chart in 2012 as a sophomore. Against Miami that year in the Shamrock Series game in Soldier Field, he carried the ball on 9 straight plays, an all-time school record. During that sequence, he accounted for 75 yards and a touchdown on a 93-yard drive. As a junior in 2013, he led the Irish in rushing with 705 yards and played in all 13 games. It was during this season that a photo was snapped of him carrying the football in a win against USC just moments after his helmet had been knocked off. In the photo, McDaniel seemingly is staring into the camera with a calm look and nonchalant smile on his face, framed with slightly tousled hair. Meanwhile, typical football field mayhem was occurring all around him. This photo with the caption, "Ridiculously photogenic football player," became an internet meme sensation. Within hours, McDaniel was in demand from media organizations all over, and eventually was featured in an interview on the Today Show. In his senior year, McDaniel was elected as team captain. With the emergence of Tarian Folston, Greg Bryant, and quarterback Everett Golson as a runner, McDaniel's opportunities to carry the ball himself shrunk, but he still managed 278 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns for the season. After college, McDaniel had a 2-year career in the Canadian Football League. In 2017, he was a member of the Toronto Argonauts team that won the Grey Cup League Championship. Cam McDaniel showed dogged determination on the football field and served his teammates well as a captain. And the sensation created by that photograph guarantees he will be remembered for more than just his performances on the gridiron.
We all remember the commercials for the most interesting man in the world. Well, Cam McDaniel made a run for the most handsome man in the world with that photo. I mean, rarely do you see a football player lose his helmet, let alone have the look on his face like all is calm amidst the storm here. But, I gave Cam McDaniel a lot of credit. In reality, at a place like Notre Dame, he should be a number 2 or probably a number 3 running back, but he was the best one that they had late in his career. And he did a fine job. He had an unfortunate fumble in a home loss late in his career, but he did a nice job. He was more than serviceable at times. And you talk about carrying the ball 9 straight times. He was somebody that Notre Dame could count on.
Yeah, absolutely. McDaniel is currently the CEO and co-founder of a company called Atom Technologies. The company specializes in producing electrostimulation devices that aid in the healing process. Cam McDaniel, another Marina at Lake Gauge all-time Irish hero. The Marina at Lake Gauge, we love boats, and it's now time for the Aspen Mortgage key to an Irish victory. Like the Irish, the 3-3 Trojans were idle last week. In their last action, they lost at home to Utah 42-26. They owned wins over San Jose State, at Washington State, and at Colorado. Besides Utah, they have lost to Stanford by 14 and Oregon State by 18. After the loss to Stanford, 6-year head coach Clay Helton was fired. Dante Williams, who was serving as the defensive backs coach, is now serving as the interim head coach. Williams becomes the 5th USC head coach Brian Kelly will have faced since coming to South Bend. The last time the Irish and the Trojans played was in 2019 when the Irish held on to win at home 30-27. Junior Keaton Slovis is a 64% passer with 9 TDs and 5 interceptions on the season. Their biggest weapon is 6'5" junior Drake London, who is having a monster year with 64 catches, 832 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I can't emphasize how impressive London has been. And he has a tremendous catch radius and is a highly skilled route runner. Senior Keontae Ingram is the top runner with 419 yards and 3 touchdowns. The offensive line this season returned 4 of 5 starters from a year ago. USC boasts a talented, albeit underperforming, front 7 on defense. Junior linebacker Drake Jackson, maybe the best of them, he leads the team with 3 sacks. But they are underperforming because they give up 27.3 points per game and 382 yards of offense per game. They are 100th in the nation in sacking the quarterback and 113th in making tackles for loss. Also of note, the Trojans have turned over the football 11 times already, and they are 126th in accumulating penalty yards. Better offensively than defensively, Tim, this team has plenty of talented players, and you never know how they might respond after a bye week. But when analyzing them, the word inconsistency keeps coming to mind. And the fact that in all likelihood, all or most of the coaching staff will be looking for a job after the season kind of adds to the whole dysfunction of the picture. This one, it would seem to me, is maybe all about not letting Slovis to London combo beat you, because the Irish to me look better at almost every other facet of this one. Tim Priester, what is the Aspen Mortgage key to an Irish victory?
They have a lot going for them offensively. I don't really know exactly how you stop Drake London. He's averaging 10.7 catches per game. He has 10 less catches than Deontay Ingram has rushing attempts.
That's amazing.
But, the key for Notre Dame, I think, is Tommy Rees needs to open up the playbook against this defense. It's a very vulnerable defense. It will bite on misdirections. They don't believe in contain. You can do a lot of things with misdirections. For example, Braden Lenzy, his 50-plus yard run 2 years ago against USC. I think the playbook is wide open for Tommy Rees, both in the passing game and the running game.
Okay, well, take advantage of a vulnerable defense, and that means Tommy Rees needs to call a great game, and that is Tim Priester's Aspen Mortgage key to an Irish victory. And Tim Priester, who is this week's Aspen Mortgage key player for the Irish?
Well, I tip my hand. I think it's Braden Lenzy. He had the big run a couple years ago, and certainly all of Notre Dame's frontline receivers are going to be involved, as well as the running backs. But I think Braden Lenzy's a guy with that little extra step and that little extra speed that can break a big play this weekend against USC. All
right, Braden Lenzy, that is your Aspen Mortgage key Irish player this week. Aspen Mortgage, for all your mortgage needs, call 486-LOAN. And it's now time for the injury report, brought to you by Indiana Physical Therapy. Your choice for physical therapy now with 21 Indiana locations. Tim, where do the Irish stand health-wise this week? And hopefully they're going to get a big tight end back.
That's where I was going to start, Phil. The best news is Michael Mayer is back, working with the number one team and ready to roll. Tyler Buckner, if you remember, he sprained an ankle late in the Virginia Tech game. He should be ready to go. I think we were a little surprised to hear about Chris Tyree not fully bouncing back from the turf toe. Game time decision is what Brian Kelly said. But Logan Diggs did some good things. And of course, Kyron Williams is still at the forefront. Last guy, Jacob Lacey, we saw him get hurt against Virginia Tech. It looked like it was a knee. It was actually a high ankle sprain. Brian Kelly said he practiced this week. This is one of Notre Dame's nose tackles. I'll be surprised if he's ready to go based upon what we saw 2 weeks ago with the injury.
Okay, well, good news on Mayer and Buckner. And folks, turf toe is a serious injury. It can be, and it's a very tricky one to treat. Thanks, Tim. And that is the Indiana Physical Therapy Injury Report. And it's now time for the world-famous Irish Illustrated Prediction, brought to you by Polypro. Beautiful, 4 times stronger than epoxy, lifetime warranty garage floors in one day. Check them out at polyprofloors.com. My wife and I love our Polypro floor. Look them up on Facebook or go to polyprofloors.com. Tim Priester, Vegas says the Irish by 6.5 points. That's bounced back and forth between 6.5 and 7 all week. What does America's foremost authority say?
It certainly looks like a high-scoring game, and Notre Dame's defense is going to have its hands full with Keaton Slovis. Certainly Drake London. I like their running back, Deontay Ingram, who's a transfer from Texas. I think they have some other receivers that are capable, in Taj Washington and Gary Bryant. So they have a lot going for them, and I think they'll score points. But I think USC is going to have an extremely difficult time in defending Notre Dame's passing game and running game. I think Jack Cohn can have a big day throwing it. I think between him and Buckner, I think they will approach, if not surpass, the 300-yard mark. And I think Buckner's important because of what he can do in a read option and how readily USC will bite it at read option fake. So I think they're going to run it too. So I think it's high scoring, and I like Notre Dame pulling away. Eventually, Notre Dame 38, USC 27.
38-27 in favor of the Irish. That is Tim Priester's world-famous Irish Illustrated prediction. Tim, we're pretty much on the same page as usual. With Michael Mayer back and a stabilized Irish offensive line that I think will be even better because they're going to benefit from working together during the bye week. And those factors combined with the overall stability of the Irish program in contrast to the USC situation should be enough for a double-digit win. Notre Dame 34, USC 24. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Phil.
Go Irish, and thanks for listening to Fighting Irish Preview. Special thanks to Jim Shovelin, Brett Rump, Art Salzberg, and studio producer Adam Schenkel. Fighting Irish Preview is the copyrighted property of Judge Phil Productions.